Beal, Forest Service Director Patty Cormier, Chief Forest Ranger Robbie Gross, and the rest of our Forest Service team. I want to welcome you. My name is Jeff Currier. I'm a Regional Forest Ranger based in our Old Town headquarters. I manage our operations in the central part of the state, which includes Washington, Hancock, Penobscot, and Piscataquis counties. We're excited to be able to present to you this evening. We've got a very healthy list of participants, and we're grateful that you took the time to want to join us tonight. Our presentation is on Maine Forest Ranger timber harvesting inspections. Basically, it's a rundown of what we do on a timber harvest inspection in Maine. We felt that this would be of particular interest to Maine's forest landowners, to Maine's logging community, and to the public in general. So we're very excited to bring it to you tonight. And I can tell you that this is the start of one of many training sessions that we're going to be undertaking over the next year or two, using this medium and others to help you understand what we're doing so that you can learn about our operation, but also so that we can learn from you. And we're very excited about that. The presentation should be about an hour or so long, maybe a little over. We're going to hold questions until the end, just for efficiency purposes and time management. My assistant, Sherry Bellavance, is online with me, along with some other folks from the department. Sherry's going to let me know when there are questions that pop up in the chat at the end, and we'll take all the time necessary to address those issues. If I don't have the answer for you tonight, I can assure you that our team will work very hard to get you the answer to your question. So if I can't do it right off the cuff, we will get to you. We're very excited to be here and appreciate everybody's time and attention. Want to first talk about the Maine Forest Service itself and how we're organized as an agency. So give me just a second here and I'll start moving through our program. Again, this discussion is on timber harvesting inspections, and specifically we're going to highlight the procedures that we undertake to collect our data on timber harvesting inspections, and the specific rules and regulations that we're looking into. Now, as you know, as many of you know, in looking at the list of participants, some of our topics here tonight are quite involved and very intricate, especially when it comes to the likes of the Forest Practices Act and our statewide water quality standards. And we'll touch on those things tonight, but I will tell you that it is our goal and objective to have more specific, in-depth trainings related to those issues in the very near future. So we're going to glance over them as quickly as we can tonight, but there is more coming from the Forest Service, from our various divisions as we move forward. So we're going to look at what we do specifically on timber harvesting inspections. Maine Forest Rangers have a pretty varied role in what we do. We have been in state government in some form since 1891, and our role has changed over the last few years, but the main emphasis of what we do has not. Our primary objective is wildfire control and the enforcement of laws dealing with the forest and forest preservation. We have a host of tools at our disposal to carry out our mission, as you can see here: watercraft, aircraft, unmanned aerial systems, good old boots on the ground. But our job is very specific. Our mission is very specific, and it is our goal in leadership of this organization to keep it that way. We want to remain mission focused on what it is we're supposed to be doing. So we'll talk about that throughout this. It's woven throughout this presentation. The Maine Forest Service, the Forest Protection Division, which houses our forest rangers, is known as the Forest Protection Division. There are 48 now field forest ranger positions in the state of Maine, with 8 districts. The district rangers are our field supervisors. As I mentioned earlier, I manage a region. We have 3 forest protection regions, south, central, and north. Across that, there are 8 districts and 48 field forest rangers. And as I mentioned at the onset, our primary objective is wildfire control and natural resource-based law enforcement. We have the final on-site responsibility and authority for wildfires statewide, whether that's in Portage or Portland or the unorganized territories of Maine. And then we enforce laws very specific to our forest
Wish I could
protection
reduce that
mission.
speaker a little bit.
You can.
And we'll make sure everybody's muted if you would. Thank you very much. So additionally, the Rangers work a schedule. We have a rotating schedule where we have staffing on 365 days per year. And the Rangers, when they're on duty, are required to be available for after-hours call-out. The number 48 is quite a bit lower than it has been in the past. But we're using technology and other practices to be as efficient as we can to carry out our mission. The mission hasn't changed a great deal over the years, but certainly our numbers have. This is the lowest number of forest ranger positions we've ever had. So let's talk a little bit about the ranger activities. We'll just give a quick summary of what we were up to in the year 2021. We track everything that we do, and we call those field activities, we call them operational activities. Totaling up from one end of the state to the other, the Rangers performed 16,209 operational activities to include over 7,000 incidents. We did almost 4,300 compliance site visits, which is like a timber harvesting inspection site visit. And within those 4,300 site visits, we did almost 41,000 individual inspections, and we'll talk about that in a minute. We checked over 3,000 burning permits. We do a lot of mapping. We do right-of-way, railroad right-of-way inspections as part of our wildfire prevention program, readiness checks, and we responded in 2021 to 650 wildfires across Maine. That's down quite a bit from 2020, where we had a pretty record-breaking year. It wasn't the most we've ever had, but it was the most we've ever had since 1985, and we had almost 1,200 fires in the year 2020. So the Rangers are active across the state, and here you should see a map highlighting our operational activities for 2021, broken down by those things I just covered: the inspections, the incidents, the mapping projects that we do, home wildfire risk assessments, etc. So as you can see, we cover the whole area of the state. We have a pretty good footprint, and we're proud of the service we give to the citizens and visitors to our state. We're not perfect. We learn every day how to do things better. We want to be able to do things better. And the leadership of this agency is committed to always looking to improve our operations from the standpoint of customer service and from the standpoint of efficiency. So, but all in all, as leaders in our organization, we are very proud of the work that our forest rangers perform. The men and women who wear this uniform work very hard, and they understand it's a privilege to wear the uniform, but at the same time, they spend a lot of time amongst a lot of the people on this team's meeting today, trying to make Maine a better place. Now, the Maine Forest Service is a bureau within the newly formed Department of Agriculture, Conservation, and Forestry. Within the Bureau of Forestry, we have 3 separate divisions. Patty Cormier, our state's forester, is the bureau director for the Maine Forest Service. Below her are 3 divisions. the Forest Health and Monitoring Division, and the Forest Protection Division. Okay, so I'm getting an error message talking about bad network, so I'm gonna hold on for just a second. Sherry, am I coming through okay?
You froze for a minute or maybe a few seconds, and then you're back now.
Okay, great. Well, when that happens, I'm going to just hold up for just a second.
Okay.
So as I mentioned, three specific divisions within the Maine Forest Service. The first one we want to talk about is the Forest Health and Monitoring Division. Forest Health and Monitoring Division houses our state's entomologists, forest entomologists, and these are the folks that work very, very hard to protect Maine from invasive species, whether they be diseases or insects. These are the folks that deal directly with the threats that are looming and very present in today's Maine forest. The emerald ash borer, the Asian longhorn beetle, these folks are working to keep that at bay, the spruce budworm, brown-tail moth, gypsy moth, and all of the other diseases which threaten our forests and ultimately our forest economy. Additionally, in the Forest Health and Monitoring Division are our forest inventory analysis people. And these folks work very, very hard to provide policymakers with data on the forest, the stocking of the forest, as well as the health of the forest. So I think these folks are the unsung heroes of our world. I think they don't get a lot of credit for the work that they do because it's often behind the scenes. But anybody who appreciates the forests or makes a living in the forest certainly recognizes, I hope, the value of our Forest Health and Monitoring Division. The next division, also very important, is our Forest Policy and Management Division, and many of you are familiar with the folks that work in this division. These are our district foresters for the most part, our district foresters and regional enforcement coordinators are the folks who help regulate the use of the forest through the enforcement of the Forest Practices Act, through Maine's statewide water quality standards. They are the technical experts in these fields, and we call on them as rangers frequently when we encounter problems specific to those areas of enforcement. Additionally, the district foresters do a lot in the form of education for loggers and small forest landowners. They do what I would refer to as walk-in talks with landowners, giving them some very basic insight on to what their forest resources, what they might be or what they have, and hopefully opening the gateway and encouraging forest landowners to hire their own licensed professional forester to help guide them in the management of whatever forest resources they own. They do a lot with education in schools, Project Learning Tree, and basically they're resource professionals that are a big part of our team. And we're very proud of them as well. And then lastly is the Forest Protection Division, which is the Rangers. The Ranger pilot, it's our dedicated support staff who work hard to protect forest resources and homes from wildfire, and who are also the primary law enforcement officers within the Maine Forest Service. So, having said all that, let's talk about what we as forest rangers do when we show up on a timber harvest, on your timber harvest, if you will. We show up. We generally don't make an appointment to show up. And our rangers actively patrol or actively looking for timber harvests on a regular basis. It's part of their objective, part of their day-to-day. We use a host of different tools to find timber harvests. We'll talk about some of those in a minute, but a lot of it's just seeking out during normal patrol status. When we see a logging job occurring, it's the rangers are expected to stop and inspect that timber harvest, like this ranger is seen here. And again, this is what we look like when we show up on a harvest. We're not sneaking around through the woods. We'll let you know we're there. If you're a logger or a landowner or a forester, you know, we wanna talk to people. We're not hiding. We want you to know we're there, and we certainly encourage people to join us as we do our walk around. And so that's the point of this training here tonight, is to take you on that walk around. We do an awful lot with data collection. And you see a picture of a ranger here, and he's looking at his agency provided smartphone. I don't want anybody to think that our rangers are busy surfing Facebook or Twitter or making TikTok videos. They're not doing that. What they're doing is they're collecting the data that we provide the department and ultimately you on our observations for timber harvest. We use a program called AT&T Workforce Manager to log all of our inspection data, and we use it to collect other pieces of information too. So when you see a ranger, you know, looking down at a screen on a phone, moving their thumbs, it's for good purpose. And this has greatly increased the efficiency of our agency. In the past, we did our forms, our inspections on paper forms. They had to be handwritten. They had to be then physically delivered to the regional headquarters, where another person did data entry, and then they were cataloged. Now, the ranger in the field can make the data entry on his own or her own, and it immediately goes into our system where leaders can see what their activities are and provide those upon request to a forest landowner, to a logger, or whomever else is interested in exactly what it is we're doing. So this is what the screen looks like. It's based on forms that we develop. They work very well. It's very efficient. It's very intuitive, very user-friendly. We collect everything from the specifics of the harvest itself, the specific laws that we're looking at while on site. We are an agency that is very heavily invested in geographic information systems. So we plot everything that we do, from the point of the inspection to tracks of where we might have walked to area calculation of the harvest itself. So all of that is done on the smartphone, and it works very, very well. And the rangers really find it very, very useful. When we are done collecting inspection data on a timber harvesting inspection, if we're in an area with adequate cell service, we're able to save it in our phone, and then we hit send, and off it goes to a secure online portal, and it produces a form like what you see here, a multi-page form with all of the information that the ranger has collected while on site. We can print these forms, we can email these forms to anybody who requests them, and they are very, very helpful. We often give them to landowners to show that exactly what we've looked at, and to give them a level of assurance that everything is going fine on their job, that their logger, their forester, their agent is representing them well. We provide these to loggers as well, and we also use these as training tools. So when we see trends in problems or what have you. So as you can see from looking at this form on the left-hand screen, that's the title page. It's one of 4, and we have the coordinates of the harvest, where we were, who the landowner is. We can put in landowner information, harvester information, forester information. We check off what we're actually looking at, and then over on the second page, page 2, we have the number approved. So when we say at the top, number of courtesy / gates approved, what we mean is that there was a gate on the property and it was intact. It hadn't been damaged by a vandal. It doesn't mean there's a requirement for there to be a gate, certainly, but that everything was fine. We will often check equipment and other things while we're on site, so we'll make note of that. We'll look at the harvest notification number. We'll talk about all these things that we look for more specifically, but we log everything that we do. And so this is a fruit of that logging using that smartphone. We also take pictures as a historical reference, as a way to paint a picture for the responsible parties, for the landowners to see exactly what we're seeing. So we think it's a really good method of logging information. You know how they say a picture is worth 1,000 words. We like these pictures, and they go right into the portal, and we can actually write on these pictures, and every picture that we take is also geo-referenced. So you know, I can look at each picture within the online secure portal and see where the ranger was standing when he or she took that picture. So it's actually quite remarkable. And lastly, everything is date and time stamped so that we as leaders and you as customers know when a ranger was there and when they filed this inspection notice. Sometimes we do area-wide inspections of larger forest landowners or larger tracts of forest land. And as I mentioned earlier, we often will track where we did those inspections through track logs of our vehicle and foot traffic. We'll put dots on the map, if you will, of where we did specific inspections, and we catalog this so that we can show our activities. This happens to be a ranger's inspection. This ranger spent the day in Forest Township, which is in northeastern Washington County. And the ranger traveled various roads, as you can see by the red lines here. And then the little green tree icons indicate where the ranger did individual inspections. Some of these I know were of logging jobs, some were camp inspections, some were water crossings, etc. And then the blue dot indicates where the ranger is when in real time. This is using a program called Avenza Maps, and I'm sure many of you on this meeting are familiar with Avenza. It's a wonderful tool. So we try and log pretty much everything that we do. Again, we want to show our leadership what we're up to, and we want to be able to show you what we're up to as our customers. Accountability in our agency is incredibly important. So let's talk now a little bit about forest operations notifications. As you know, many of you know, we have recently had a change in the way we file forest operations notifications. The Maine Forest Service now has an online portal for filing FONs, if you will, forest operations notifications, and it's called Forest. This is a screenshot of the Forest portal. We find it is very intuitive. It is very well set up and very well managed. There are some real benefits to using this versus the old paper system. There's a really fast turnaround. So you get your forest operations notification as required by law in really quick time. The setup for an account itself can be done in less than 10 minutes. And then when once you're in the system, you're in long term. So the next time you log in for future harvests, it's that much easier. It's got a great mapping feature. We're very proud of the map, and it certainly can help you. It can help your landowners and customers. It can also help us and the district foresters in our efforts to help regulate activities. We're soon going to be able to do forest landowner reports that many of you are aware of, annual landowner reports. That'll be able to be done on the forest system. And the other thing is this system requires that a forest operations notification be done completely. In the past, we've had situations where they weren't done completely. And that's problematic because until it's complete, it's technically your harvest is not notified. And when the rangers got notified of incomplete forest operations notifications, that required us to make a visit. And that's technically a violation of law. So we're very proud of this system. The rangers and the district foresters and our dedicated staff at the Harlow Building headquarters in Augusta are very helpful in hopefully helping you if you have questions or problems. There's a gent by the name of Stephen Nicholas who may be on this call today. Stephen is the person that you're going to get on the phone when you call about an issue with the forest system. If you have questions or concerns, he's an extremely helpful gentleman, and he will guide you through this process. And if necessary, the district foresters and the rangers themselves will come to help you as well. But almost to a person, everybody that I've dealt with on the forest system, new users, have found that it is very intuitive and very helpful long term. So we're very, very pleased with that. And again, we're no longer accepting the paper forest operations notifications. It's using this system only. So let's talk a little bit about forest operation notifications themselves. It is required by law for certain harvests that a forest operations notification be filed with the Maine Forest Service prior to the start of timber harvesting operations. There are a couple of exemptions, and those are part of Title 12, Section 8883-B, and we can talk about those in just a minute. But furthermore, once you have filed your forest operations notification, there is another requirement that the forest operations notification number be posted at the job site. Why do we require that? Why does law require that? Well, the reason is the rangers and the district foresters often work different hours. The rangers specifically work weekends, and we check a lot of timber harvests on the weekend. We can, through the computer systems in our trucks, we can actually access the notification information through our mobile data terminals or our laptops within our trucks, and we can look up by harvest number who the landowner is, who the logger is, who the forester might be, the designated agent, and it really helps us. It's sort of like a license plate, right? So it's very critical that that be on site, because that saves an awful lot of time of us chasing that around. To not have it posted on site is a violation of law. Additionally, in a little bit, we're going to talk about trip tickets. And one of the requirements on a trip ticket to be filled out by a driver of a truck hauling forest products is that they put the harvest notification number or notification number on the trip ticket. So to have it posted at the site makes their job that much easier. All right, so that's notifications. You got to have one before you start a commercial timber harvest, and it has to be posted. If your notification is incomplete, then you're in violation of law the moment you start cutting. So let's talk a little bit now about slash. What is slash? Slash is defined as the branches, barks, tops, chunks, cull logs, uprooted stumps, basically the remnants of what's left behind from a timber harvesting operation, right-of-way clearance, land clearance, or road construction. And we look at this from the perspective of wildfire prevention. There are several laws that rangers are looking at while they're on a timber harvest with respect to slash. Slash must be removed from within 25 feet of property and utility lines. So there's an expectation that our rangers will walk property lines on timber harvests. Okay, so anytime that there's a logging job and that slash is left within 25 feet, we're going to make note of that in an inspection, and we're probably going to require by law that that be moved from further away than 25 feet. Okay. Title 12, Section 9334 talks about slash along land bordering another, and it goes on to say that all slash resulting from such cutting of forest growth shall not remain on the ground within 25 feet of a property line, provided that the director, and that means the forest rangers, on his or her own initiative or the complaint of another, declares that situation a fire hazard. So that last part gives us a little bit of flexibility. Okay, if we don't see it so much as a fire hazard, you know, we may look at it with a little lighter hand, but for the most part, all slash in time can become a fire hazard, and we're concerned about wildfire growth in this state, and so we take a pretty stern look at slash within 25 feet of a property or a utility line. So this slide here, when talking about slash, is an overview of what we're looking at, what landowners should look at, what foresters and loggers should be concerned with when doing a timber harvest on a piece of property. So let's assume that the red outline is a parcel that's going to be harvested. So there are many there are several slash laws that will apply here. So just be thinking about this. So right off the gate, you can see the property line, slash must be pulled back 25 feet. Same with the utility line, which appears to be on the north section of this property. So that would have to be removed. But additionally, before I go too far, there are other slash laws that I want to talk about. Slash must be removed from 50 feet from the public way. So from the nearer side of the public way, you can't leave slash within 50 feet. Fire prevention law. People throwing cigarettes and cigars out windows of vehicles. Slash must be pulled back 50 feet. Additionally, slash cannot be left within 100 feet of a dwelling. So as you can see here in this slide, we've got several dwellings. You can't have slash within 100 feet of a dwelling. So lots of things to consider with slash. Now, if we find a violation of one of the slash laws that I've just mentioned, what we're going to do is we're going to note that in our inspection using our smartphone. By law, we are required to give the person or firm that caused that slash violation, we're required to give them 30 days to remove it. So we will make note of the date and time that we inspected and found the slash violation. We will have a meeting with the logger, landowner, forester, or designated agent, or all, and say, okay, we've found a slash violation. Here's the issue. Here's where it is. 30 days from now, this needs to be gone, needs to be removed. And what we will do is come back in that at the end of that 30-day period and re-inspect. We like to have slash problems not even occur in the first place because, you know, we think it would be unfortunate, especially on a small logging job, for a logger or contractor to have to bring equipment back to a job that they've completed and moved on from to deal with a slash violation. So we try and, like all our violations, we try and prevent violations from occurring in the first place. So we're gonna hopefully you'll prevent these, and hopefully if there are issues, we'll catch them quickly. But 30 days, we got to give you 30 days to remove the slash. Sherry, how are we doing?
You're doing great.
Well, thank you. I'm not so sure about great, but we're doing nonetheless. Okay, so we're going to move on from slash now, and we're going to talk about spark arresters. Spark arresters is another fire prevention law that we enforce in Maine. And basically, Maine law says that if you operate power-driven equipment within 1,000 feet of forest lands in the state of Maine, that piece of equipment has to have a fire prevention device, commonly known as a spark arrestor. So I don't know of too many places in Maine where you aren't within 1,000 feet of forest land. I mean, heck, we're the nation's most forested state. More trees per acre grow here in Maine than any other state in the nation, right? And our forest resources are very important to us. So from a fire prevention standpoint, we look for spark arresters. Now, more modern logging and farming equipment have turbochargers as part of the diesel engine components. Turbochargers actually serve as spark arresters. What spark arresters do is they're designed to catch carbon particles which build up within the exhaust system of engines, gasoline engines and diesel engines. What happens is they obviously, with the heat of the engine, they get very, very hot. And if there's no spark arrestor or no turbocharger to grind them up, these carbon particles can come out of the exhaust system, and oftentimes they're in excess of 1,200 degrees Fahrenheit. And they land on dry forest fuels, pine needles, leaves, slash, what have you, and they can start fires. They have started fires in Maine, and so we take this very seriously. So we check for power-driven equipment to make sure it has either a spark arrestor or a turbocharger. So this is this next slide is a picture of an actual spark arrestor that you might find on a skidder or a farm tractor or a bulldozer or something of the like. And essentially what it is, it's a can with fins on the inside that attaches in a certain direction, so it catches those carbon particles, traps them, so they don't shoot out the exhaust system. There's a clean out valve or nut or bolt screw on the spark arrestor, so it's incumbent upon the operator to make sure that not only they have it, but it's operating properly. And we will often ask operators to remove the clean out plug, screw, or nut, what have you, to show that it's working. And if it's working, when they open that, out will fall into the ground little cold pieces of carbon, and they're very small. You know, like sometimes grains of salt or grains of sugar. That shows that it's working, and so that's very important. So you have to have it, and it has to be working. So the rangers will often get up on equipment to take a quick look. We don't put tools to other people's equipment. We'll leave that to the owner operator, but we do check to make sure that they have them and that they're working properly. And if they're not, then we have the authority to put a piece of equipment as out of service. We also do this with multi-directional power-driven equipment like chainsaws and brush saws and other things of the like. So we often will check a logger's or a landowner's spark arrestor on the saw itself. And for the most part, the most important component is a screen within the exhaust. And the next slide will show that. But other parts of the spark arrestor include the dogs that hold the wood away from the hot exhaust. Those are very important. So let's take a look now at this actual screen. So I'm hoping there's not too much of a delay, but as you can see here, as indicated by the arrow, there's a little mesh screen on the inside of the exhaust of that chainsaw that you just saw. We look for that. That traps those carbon particles so they don't come flying out. Now this is all significant because if we have a wildfire, and if our investigation determines that it started from a spark from a piece of equipment and that piece of equipment did not have an appropriate working approved spark arrestor, the operator and or the owner can be charged criminally for that, and they can be held liable for suppression costs and ultimately civilly for damages caused by that failure to have a spark arrestor, if in fact it's caused a wildfire. So nobody wants to see that happen. because I can tell you fires can be very, very expensive, and nobody wants to be charged with anything, much less have a big bill for several $1,000s to put a fire out. And lastly, I guess I would tell you that we also enforce spark arrestor laws on Maine's railroads. So there are 1,162 miles of active rail line in the state. The rangers enforce spark arrestor laws on locomotives, either through having them have turbochargers or actual bigger spark arrestors. And so we check those regularly. All right, get a drink here. Let's talk a little bit now about our role, the Forest Ranger's role in the enforcement of the Forest Practices Act. The Forest Practices Act regulates the size, arrangement, regeneration, and management of clear cuts in our state. It's not a new law. In fact, it was enacted in 1989. It's been modified over the years, but essentially, it was enacted to basically put some controls on the wide-scale use of clear cuts without any separation zones or what have you. We play more of a watchdog role in that, whereas I mentioned earlier that our Forest Policy and Management Division's district foresters and the regional enforcement coordinators are the subject matter experts and the lead agency when it comes to the enforcement of the Forest Practices Act. The role of the Forest Ranger in doing our timber harvesting inspections with regard to the Forest Practices Act is to take cursory looks at harvests, and when we see a harvest which may be pushing the envelope as far as being a clear cut or not, we often will talk with the landowner, with the forester, the designated agent, and say, hey, we think this is a clear cut, you know, and there's nothing wrong with clear cuts. Clear cuts are, we recognize, as a very effective forest management tool when applied properly. But if it's bigger than what we feel it's legally authorized to be, or if the basal area is such that, you know, it really looks like a barren wasteland, then what the rangers do is we notify the district foresters and the regional enforcement coordinators, and they'll take a closer look. Now, when they do take a closer look, and ultimately if they determine that the lot needs to be cruised to determine how much basal area, how much stocking is still left on the harvest, we'll often support them in that role. We are all trained in doing plots on plot lines with them under their guidance, under their tutelage, and so we help them in the same way they help us. We help them. So that's just a little bit on the Forest Practices Act, and I can tell you that one of the goals of our training series is to have some very specific trainings on the Forest Practices Act itself, where more technical experts with much greater knowledge than I can guide you through any questions that you may have. But the rangers are trained in recognizing what clear cut looks like. We understand the rules and regulations with the categories of clear cuts. We understand certainly the forest operations notification process and how a landowner would request a variance to get a clear cut through the Forest Policy and Management Division for the various sizes, et cetera. You know, when we're looking at timber harvests, we're not just looking at the stocking, but we're, you know, as far as how much is left, but what is still there. We are trained in, you know, what are commercially valuable species. You know, what is a clear cut? And you know, by definition, a clear cut in Maine is an area greater than 5 acres with a residual basal area of less than 30 square feet per acre. So as part of the Ranger Academy, we're trained in being able to eyeball those things, and if it's close or it's way over, way beyond what we think it should be, then again, we're going to reach out to the Forest Policy and Management Division. The rangers are also trained in recognizing what's an overstory removal. There are a lot of overstory removals that take place as management strategies within Maine. You know, we recognize the definition in Maine law of an overstory removal of trees, 450 trees per acre, with softwoods being 3 feet and hardwoods being 5. So we see these, and you know, so, and when we're looking at these, we're always looking at the fire side of our jobs as well. So we're always fire planning. You know, what would we do if we had a fire in this area? How would we deal with it? You know, is the stand susceptible to fire? Are there buffer zones? Are there stand type changes? So we're looking at all that as well. So, and we'll note on our inspections, if you were to go back to the inspection form, we'll note that this harvest is a partial harvest, or it's an overstory removal, or if there's a clear cut, and we'll often note also, we have a checkbox which says we need to notify the Forest Policy and Management Division, or this should require a subsequent follow-up inspection. So, and you'll be able to see all that if you request a copy of one of our inspections. So, just some basic definitions with the Forest Practices Act. More to come in training, future training series on that, but that's what the rangers do. We're the watchdogs for the Forest Service, providing intel and information for the Forest Policy and Management Division. Okay, so let's talk a little bit now about property lines. As I mentioned earlier, in the enforcement of the slash laws, it's our expectations that forest rangers walk property lines. We may not be able to walk every property line, but it's expected that they make a strong effort to walk property lines for the enforcement of the slash laws, but also to look at it from the perspective of timber trespass. And that's something that we spend an awful lot of time with. So this particular picture is almost like a circus tent. I kind of chuckled at it when I first saw it, but apparently somebody really wanted us to know that this, or wanted everybody to know this is where the property line was. So yeah, so let's talk a little bit about the laws surrounding property lines with respect to timber harvests. Okay. Title 17, Section 2511, harvesting timber near a property line. Okay, basically what this says is a landowner or a landowner representative shall clearly mark established property lines within 200 feet of an area to be harvested, and this marking must be completed prior to the start of timber harvesting operations and must be clearly visible. This can be done with blazes, but more often than not, because of economics and time, it's done with, like you see here, flagging. There are some exemptions to this law, which we'll talk about in a little bit, but this law was brought about because back in the 90s and early 2000s, we were investigating over 1,000 timber theft and trespass cases per year, right? That's a lot, especially for an agency our size. And so we wanted a law to help prevent these violations from occurring in the first place. It had been kicked around for a long time for a mandatory notification of abutters, and people just didn't have the appetite for that. But what this does is it puts the onus on the landowner or their representative to mark the harvest prior to the start of harvest operations if you're going to cut within 200 feet. If you stay away from a property line, 200 feet from a property line, fine, you don't have to mark it. Most people will anyway. Most professionals do. Now, some specifics with this law that I think are important is it mentions an established property line. An established property line is basically one of three things in a nutshell. It's pre-existing historical evidence of a boundary, such as old blaze marks, barbed wire fences, rock walls. pre-existing historical evidence of a boundary. Another definition of a boundary in this law is a line that's been established by a licensed surveyor in Maine. Obviously, those are the folks who are the subject matter experts in property lines. So when a surveyor puts in a line, that's a property line. And the last, which is kind of the most interesting, is when there's no marking at all, and or limited marking, I guess I'd say, and two abutting landowners come together. Let's say landowner A is wanting to have their lot harvested. They want to work with landowner B to establish the property line. They can do that. They can do that. They can agree on where the line is, mark it with flagging like you see in this picture, and they are then within the law, so long as they both agree as to where the property line is. So that's what we mean when we say established property line. And again, this must be done prior to the start of harvest operations. There is a 5-acre exemption as well if you're going to cut less than 5 acres. But for the most part, most professionals mark property lines if you're going to come even close to them. So we check this on our timber harvesting inspections and note that the property line is well marked or not. So this is an interesting picture here. It's just a stump, but it's a stump with a piece of barbed wire going through it, barbed wire fencing, which is kind of interesting. Now, when we talk about property lines, we also have to talk about line trees. Okay, line trees are those trees that basically are in the center of a property line and are blazed, that straddle a property line. And there's always been this old wives' tale in Maine that you could cut every other line tree. And it's just not true. If in the statute 172511, if a line tree is straddling the property line and is blazed, you can't cut it, right? Imagine you're a property owner and you've paid a licensed surveyor several $1,000s to do the good work that they do, mapping and marking your property lines, and your neighbor decides to cut every one of those marked trees. You'd probably be pretty upset, wouldn't you? I would be. So that wives' tale needs to be put to bed. So when the rangers are walking the property lines, we're looking for these trees, and we'll also take a glance at the log piles out at the logging yard to see if there are any blaze marks on the trees. If there are, then we're going to have to talk to somebody about why those trees are cut, and that can lead to an unlawful cutting of trees charge. So be very careful when it comes to line trees. Before I leave the boundary marking law, I can tell you that this law has been very successful in its intent. And its intent was, again, to limit the number of timber trespass cases that occurred in Maine. It has done its job, and we're very pleased with that. This is definitely a score. So another thing that we spend an awful lot of time looking at, and unfortunately investigating, are timber theft cases. You know, the difference between theft and trespass. You know, trespass is crossing a property line, sometimes accidentally, sometimes with intent. That's timber trespass to us. And then there's timber theft, where it's out and out thievery. And that may involve crossing a property line with intent, intentionally, knowingly, or recklessly crossing someone's line with the intent to deprive them of their timber, stealing. Or it is often what we investigate for cases, it's often probably better described as timber fraud. And what we mean by timber fraud is while the overwhelming, and I mean overwhelming majority of the resource professionals, timber business, the landowners, the loggers, the foresters, the surveyors, while the overwhelming majority of these people are upstanding, hardworking citizens, there are some knuckleheads out there that want to take advantage of people. And some of these knuckleheads are what I'd say predatory. They prey on the elderly. They prey on misinformed landowners. They prey on landowners who are absentee, and they often have an intent to deprive landowners of the proceeds from a timber harvest. So by that I mean an unscrupulous logger gets a contract with a forest landowner, let's say an elderly forest landowner, and this logger will cut 5 truckloads in a week, and they choose to deprive the landowner by only paying for 3. That's pretty serious. And that, as you know, with the value of wood, value of timber, that can add up very quickly. So in response to the scenario where we were investigating over 1,000 timber theft and trespass cases a year, this law was enacted at the request of the Maine Forest Service. And it's in Title 17, Section 2512, and it's called Failure to Pay for Trees Harvested. Failure to pay for trees harvested is a great law. And it's basically, it's got some teeth to it in that it's got some minimum mandatory components to it. But essentially, in a nutshell, what it says, it defines what's a forest product. And it also basically says this, that absent a written contract stating other payment arrangements, that a person, firm, or corporation harvesting trees on the land of another shall pay for each truckload of wood within 45 days of delivery to a pulp mill, log mill, sawmill, log yard, chip mill, 45 days. And if they don't pay within 45 days, they're in violation of law. When this law was crafted, it was felt that 45 days is an adequate amount of time for a logging contractor to receive payment from the mill and then turn over the stumpage proceeds that they've agreed upon in a contract to a landowner. 45 days. If it goes beyond 45 days, then they're in violation. So this law has been very effectively employed across the state, and it has really had a significant positive impact on limiting some of the activities of those predatory loggers who just want to take advantage of people. And it's our view that the good people, many of whom are on this call today, the good people who work in this industry applaud getting rid of the bad apples, because they give the whole industry a bad name. And additionally, you know, I've talked with loggers before where, and I'll just use round numbers here, they probably won't make any sense, you know, from today's market, but let's say a landowner is talking to 2 separate logging contractors. One logging contractor says, I'll pay you $50 a cord for spruce studwood as stumpage. Another says, well, I'll pay you $100. Well, most landowners are going to say, well, I'll go with the person offering me $100. Well, that's all fine and good, but there may be a bad reason that this person's offering $100 a cord for spruce studwood. It may be that they only intend, to pay for half of it. They intend to defraud somebody. So most good loggers applaud us applying this law because it gets rid of the people that are just taking advantage of others. So let's talk now about another thing that rangers inspect while on timber harvests and in other places, and that is trip tickets. Trip tickets. Trip tickets are required in Title 10, which is part of Maine's weights and measures law. And basically, trip tickets serve as what we call the written chain of custody for the movement of forest products in Maine. Okay? A trip ticket is a written document that shall accompany a load of wood, whether that be logs or studwood or pulpwood or wood chips or biomass or whatever. It shall accompany that load of wood from the logging job, from where it was cut, to the mill, log yard, sawmill, where it's being delivered. And it has, as part of the law, it has some very specific items that need to be included on the trip ticket. And the onus for trip tickets is put on the drivers of log trucks, chip trucks, pulp trucks, etc., because they're required to sign it. And as you can see from this slide, there's a lot of information, but it paints a picture as to where this wood came from, who owns it, who cut it, the date it was cut, the town from which it was cut, the harvest notification number, which we talked about earlier, the name of the hauler and the destination of the wood, and finally the signature of the truck driver. So as an instrument of being a written part of a written chain of custody for wood, these can be used to help us in timber theft investigation, timber fraud investigations. They can help prove guilt for violators, and that's important to us. But as I just dealt with a company just on a complaint just the other day where a landowner called and he felt he had been defrauded by the logging contractor and the truck driver. Well, I contacted the contractor and I contacted the driver, and they provided me with all of the documentation, including trip tickets, which showed how many loads were hauled from the property, where they went, and everything listed in this law. So I say that to illustrate that we use them not only to prove guilt of violators, but we also use them to exonerate the innocent when it's been suggested that they may have shorted a landowner. So trip tickets are very important. Drivers, we emphasize to drivers all the time the importance of them doing them completely and accurately. So it's a big part of what we do when we're doing inspections. Upon request, a truck driver must present the trip ticket to any employee of the state charged with enforcing the provisions of this subchapter. And in the same vein with trip tickets, a wood scaler at a mill or a log yard, log concentration yard, shall provide us with a copy of the trip ticket or the scale slip, which we'll cover here in just a minute. So it's required that when we ask for these, that they have to show them to us. And in looking at this picture, this is kind of interesting. Some landowners have taken to requiring their loggers, their contractors, to paint on the back of loads numbers specific to that harvest, whether it's the actual part of the number of the trip ticket or part of the harvest notification number. And we, as rangers, make note of those in our inspections while we're on the site and when we see loads in transit. So we provide that information to the landowner so that they can say, or we can say to them, on this date, we observed a load of white pine logs on a trailer, on a truck and trailer operated by this company, leaving your lot, heading to wherever it's going. So again, just helping them, give them intel on when loads are leaving. Here's an example of a trip ticket, made out. They're not very fancy, but they do have the basic information of who, what, where, when, and where it's going, and a signature of the driver to verify exactly that this is accurate and information. When these are not filled out correctly, or when they're filled out with bogus information, it's a violation of state law, and we'll write a ticket. Title 10, Section 2368, violation of Maine's wood measurement regulations. So we do take this enforcement very seriously. I mentioned mill scale slips. Mill scale slips are used in the same way as trip tickets. When a load of wood is delivered to a mill or a log concentration yard and it's been weighed, measured, or scaled, the scaler shall complete a scale slip. And the information on the trip ticket must be transferred to the scale slip, or the trip ticket must be attached. Again, it's another piece of that written chain of custody for the load. So Maine's got some really good laws. Maine is the envy of our sister agencies in other states because we have good laws to protect landowners and to protect hardworking, honest loggers that don't defraud people, right? So we're very pleased with the laws that we have. accurate and verifiable measurements. So here's what needs to be on the scale slip that is produced at the mill or log concentration yard where the wood is delivered. Very similar to the trip ticket. All right, so now let's shift gears a little bit and let's get into another more technical topic, and that is Maine's statewide water quality standards. And I'm sure that many of you have specific questions on some technicalities of that law. I can tell you, like the Forest Practices Act, we're going to have subsequent training sessions on statewide water quality standards. As with the Forest Practices Act, the rangers are the eyes of the Maine Forest Service for the most part on timber harvests across Maine as we inspect them, looking for violations or problems which might lead to violations of Maine's statewide water quality standards. We don't want to see a stream crossing with water which should be clear, looking like chocolate milk. None of us want to see that for protection of fisheries habitat, for drinking water, and it's just bad practice. So we are trained in the basics of the statewide water quality standards, but like the Forest Practices Act, when we see a violation, if it's something we cannot fix right on scene with a logging contractor, forester, designated agent, landowner, we then notify the subject matter experts, district foresters, and regional enforcement coordinators within the Forest Policy and Management Division. Rangers are trained to look at the mapping for areas under statewide standards for water quality. We are trained to recognize, streams, rivers, and the drainages and the buffer zones that are required when operating in areas that are regulated in this way. We look at, everything from, adequate shade to integrity of shoreline. The most obvious things we're looking for is to make sure equipment isn't driving through streams or within riparian zones and whatnot. So we're looking for this all the time, and again, we're going to train more on it as we move forward. But the statewide water quality standards, as you know, continues to grow with more and more towns adopting the standards, so that we might at some point in the very near future, if we haven't already, hit that standard where everybody will be under the same. So we're very excited about that. And we think that, most loggers in the state and certainly most foresters, designated agents, and landowners respect these laws and do a good job protecting the integrity of streams across the state. We do find problems, and when we can work with a contractor to fix a problem quickly, we will do that. If it's a repeated violation by people that just don't care, or it's so serious that it's unable to fix quickly, then we again notify the Forest Policy and Management Division. So when the rangers are on harvest, we typically will look at a map of the harvest that you've created in the forest system. We have our own mapping with USGS topographical maps and DeLorme, Atlas, and Gazetteer. So we'll look to see where there are mapped streams on a property. We'll also look at ponds and wetlands and sometimes even coastal wetlands to look at those things that I mentioned earlier, the shoreline integrity, the buffer zones, the adequate shade, openings, making sure the openings aren't excessive. So we're looking for these things as well. So a lot to statewide water quality standards, but for the most part, we're looking for the basics. Keep equipment out of streams, make sure that siltation isn't caused, make sure there aren't any grand openings within buffer zones that are excessive. And again, if we see a problem, we're going to say something to the people involved with the harvest, and if it's significant enough, we'll pass it along. Okay, just like this statement here. And it's the same with the Forest Practices Act. So we're the watchdogs. And we'll let you know, though, when we see something. And that brings up another point. I mean, a lot of the inspection work that we do, if we don't find a problem, we may not seek you out. But if we do find a problem, you're going to know about it right away. We feel it's proper to immediately notify the landowner, forester, agent, logger when we find a problem, because we want to fix it quickly. We don't want it getting worse. We're not an agency that's waiting for you to make mistakes in the bushes, nor are we an agency that will let a problem get big. We want to prevent them from happening in the first place, and when we do find them, we want to nip it in the bud quickly to take care of the problem so that we can make things better. Okay, again, immediate direct action. When we find a violation, we're going to do what we can to keep it from getting worse. So, a new thing that you might see with respect to forest rangers doing harvest inspections is the use of UAS, unmanned aerial systems, or drones. Drones are a fairly new thing for the Maine Forest Service, but we are probably one of the premier agencies in all of state government to utilize this fascinating and great efficiency creating tool. So if you happen to see one of our rangers on your timber harvest and he or she pulls out a drone, it's not because anybody's done anything wrong. It's just because we're using it to document what's going on and to get a quick look and overview of exactly what's going on within the harvest. And these drones, for those of you that haven't experienced them, they're incredible. I mean, the images that they produce are just stunning. This particular picture that you're seeing here was taken by a ranger. You can see the truck parked on, that's the Golden Road, the famous Golden Road. He went up 300 feet and snapped a picture. And the image quality is just outstanding. This is with a drone that costs $400. I mean, just stunning what they're able to do. So we'll use these on active timber harvest just to take a quick scan of what's going on, to get a quick look at the harvest in general. We'll perhaps key in on areas which might be looking a little thin with respect to the Forest Practices Act, or areas where there are statewide water quality concerns or issues, or just, ponds, lakes, streams, wetlands in general. And we'll take a look at it from the air, and if it requires further looking at from the ground, then we can make a beeline through the woods to check that. And they again produce some awesome images. And one thing that we are very eager to do and very willing to do is to share these photographs when we take them with a landowner, with a forester, with loggers, so they can see the progress of the harvest, to see pockets of wood or whatever. I mean, we're more than happy to download the images from the drone and then email them to whomever might want them. So it's something of a value-added service. We also use the drones a lot in our wildfire control mission, for wildfire detection, for finding fires when we get smoke reports, and they are incredibly efficient and very, very helpful. So we're very pleased to have them in our arsenal of tools to do a better job protecting Maine. And we're coming to the end. I want to talk a little bit about what we call timber asset security checks. Timber asset security checks are our effort to help protect forest landowners and loggers from abuse, from people who want to steal, and from people who want to vandalize forest land, and more specifically, in this case, logging equipment. I think most people would be shocked to know what it costs to buy a forwarder like this one here seen in this picture, or to buy a new skidder, or a feller buncher, or any number of pieces of equipment. So given that the rangers work 365 days per year on a rotating schedule, we make it a point to visit logging jobs on weekends, nights, and holidays when the logging contractors are getting some well-deserved time off. We do these as high visibility checks. We want people to see us so that anybody who might be considering stealing from a logging site, fuel, tools, equipment, joyriding in equipment, or just vandalizing equipment for their own jollies, we want them to think twice about that. So the rangers make a point of doing this. As you can see on this folder, there's a little white tag. Those are soon to be blaze orange in our latest run of those. We tag these pieces of equipment to let the logger, the landowner, know that we've been there, and also to let people who might be considering messing with this equipment that we've been there and we might be back again. We date and time stamp when we were there, contact information, in this case, property found okay, and it lets everybody know that that we've been there. So, in wrapping up, before we go to questions and answers, or hopefully questions and hopefully answers, contacting us, as I mentioned at the start of the presentation, the Maine Forest Service Forest Protection Division and its forest rangers under Chief Ranger Robbie Gross are divided into 3 regions. Our southern region is based at our Bolton Hill facility on Route 3, North Belfast Avenue in Augusta, and the number is there. The central regional headquarters where I work, supervising the rangers in my area of responsibility, is in Old Town, at the Old Town Airport, 87 Airport Road. And our northern region headquarters is at 45 Radar Road in Ashland. Then we have district facilities across the state. We have a very active website where you can contact us by having all these phone numbers and see who covers what. We have a very active social media presence on Facebook and Twitter. You can contact us through those 2 mediums as well and see what it is we're doing in our role to protect Maine and homes and forest resources from wildfire, theft, and abuse. And so we're very pleased to do this work. We're very pleased with the rangers and the work they do, and we're very pleased with the partnerships that we forge with the landowners, with Maine's licensed professional foresters, and with our logging community, which is full of hard work and dedicated people that that have forest landowners' interests at heart, as well as our environment. All those people work together to make Maine a pretty remarkable place, and so that's where we're at. So, having said all that, I closed my presentation, and now, Sherry, are you still with us, Sherry?
Yes, I am.
Okay, so I would like you to help me with anybody who might have a question or a comment. Sherry's going to be our moderator for this, and I'll do my best to answer the questions as completely and accurately as I can. And again, if I don't have the answer, we'll get it for you. And you can put your notes in the chat. You can put your email address in the chat, or you can email me directly. I'll give you my email address. Sherry can probably type it into the chat for me. I don't have the chat available to me right now. But if anybody wants to email me, I'll see that your question's answered either by me or one of my counterparts in the appropriate area of the state. So what do we have for questions, Sherry?
Right now, there isn't any questions. If anybody has any questions, please put them in the chat and we can address them.
I'm going to wait for a little while, and if we see any hand raised too, Sherry, we can do it that route too.
Sure.
Our goal again is to share this information so that you know what we're doing, and so that we can hopefully be helpful, enforce the laws that we're charged with enforcing. But also we believe in relationship building, and we want people to know that we're here to help, along with the district foresters, along with the forest entomologists and the forest inventory people and the director's office and the commissioner's office. We're all a team that wants to help. So glad to answer any questions. I'm going to wait for a while until we get some. And if we don't have any, then we'll sign off.
I see that Bud Churchill has his hand raised.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mr.
Philbrick, I'm
Churchill.
sorry,
Good evening.
Bud Philbrick.
Oh,
No,
I'm
it's,
sorry.
It's actually Bud. No, that's all right. It's Bud Philbrick with Broken Arrow Logging. I reside in Island Falls,
Okay.
and I just wanted to make a comment, two comments really, not so much questions, but number one, like I'm an actual logger, and I know there are a bunch of us on this call, and I just wanted to make or note the observation that Maine Forest Service rangers have, as I know they have with the other gentlemen on the call as well, have made just numerous inspections of my sites. And I would like you all to know at the state level that I have found those folks to be nothing but courteous, very helpful, just top shelf folks, really a good interface, strong representatives of the state of Maine and the Maine Forest Service. So I wanted you to know that, number one. And number two, Jeff, wanted to compliment your presentation. I have experienced a number of inspections, so I knew generally what folks were looking for, but I'll tell you, you packed a lot into an hour and 15 minutes, a lot of information, and very informative information. It wasn't just fill, it was very informative. So thanks for your efforts in doing this.
Well, thank you, sir, for both of those things. I know the chief ranger's on as well, and perhaps he'd like to pop up and say a few words. If he doesn't, that's fine. But we love the feedback. You know, like I said at the beginning, we're not a perfect agency. We make mistakes. We learn from those mistakes, and we try and do better every day. But as leaders, we're very proud of the people in the field. They do work hard. And I appreciate you taking the time to say those things. And again, we're glad to do this. This is actually fun. I mean, it's work, but it's fun. It's great to be able to share what you do with our customers. That's important to us. So thank you for those positive pieces of feedback. I'm grateful.
Lieutenant, it looks like Morton Mosswild has his hand raised.
Okay, Morton, what can we do for you, sir?
Hey, Jeff, I just wanted to echo those sentiments and say what a thorough and excellent presentation it was. And I really appreciate it and appreciate the mention of how the district foresters and the rangers work closely together. It's an important teamwork that we undertake. So thanks for that. And also, you know, district foresters certainly are reachable as well, either through the regional office on the website or through the Augusta office. We're really easy to find. So if people have questions of us, they're more than happy to contact us. I just wanted to throw out one other thought, and I'll speak for district foresters. I'm guessing the rangers take a similar approach. When we're on a harvest site, we certainly want to be helpful. We want to talk to whoever's there and you know, answer questions or, you know, provide feedback. There will be occasions, and I think you'll all appreciate that, if we appear to be a little bit standoffish, it's not because we don't want to talk to you. It's basically we're really safety conscious. We want to be aware that you know, your equipment is operating. We can hear it. We don't want to be anywhere where we might cause any kind of safety issue for ourselves or for yourselves, we may choose to park at a little bit of a distance just because we don't want to be in your way. And we definitely recognize that time is money as well. So so in that scenario, we don't want to slow you down if if there's no reason to. So we're definitely going to try to make eye contact if there's any kind of issue. We're going to be very careful, and we're going to be respectful of your safety and your effort to be productive and efficient. So again, I just wanted to say thanks, and however we can help as well, by all means, let us know.
Excellent. Thank you, Mort, for that. And yeah, you're right. It is one team, and we do work very closely, and we share those same sentiments with regard to safety on logging jobs and respecting productivity. And so I'm glad you made those points. So thank you for that. How are we doing, Sherry?
There's no questions coming in, Lieutenant.
Okay. Is the Chief Ranger on? Would he like to have a remark?
Thank you, Jeff, and thank you, everybody. Just great job, presenting this material, and really, it's great to hear the feedback. And ultimately, our goal is really to just create this interaction to help each other out, to make your lives just as easy as possible. And we really strive to serve you. And I can't stress enough that if you have concerns, if you have problems, reach out to Maine Forest Service, and we want to be able to help you. So don't hesitate to make that call. We'd much rather guide you through a situation than have something happen where we have to come and talk to you about something later. So be proactive and reach out. We would more than appreciate it. Thank you, Jeff. Great job.
Thank you, Chief. Appreciate it. Is the director on?
I think she had to step off.
Okay.
So
Okay. Just wanted to offer her an opportunity to address the group if able, but she's very busy. So understand. Sherry, anything else coming in?
Nothing.
Okay. Well, I think you've put my number in the chat, or my email in the chat, Sherry, have you?
Yes, I did.
Okay, so if people want to make note of that and follow up with questions, comments, or concerns, they can do that, and I'll see that those are all answered. And yeah, just shoot us an email. And as the chief said, we want to be proactive and help. So I really want to say thank you to everyone on the meeting today for your attention and for your interest. And I look forward to, along with other members of the Maine Forest Service, to doing similar and other topics for discussion in the very near future. So with that, signing off from the plush but not too overly ostentatious ranger station at Jonesboro. Have a good evening, everyone.
Thank you.